I'm really happy to be here today. And thank you so much, Cindy, for what you said. That was so optimistic and that was wonderful. I'm honored to be here today to get to talk to you about change and how change affects us and how it's our perception of us that makes the difference. I don't much like change. I like things to be predictable. I want them to stay the way they are. Unless, of course, I instigate it, then I like it. But for the most part, change is tough for me. And I think it's tough for me because of my upbringing, in which I lived in crisis all the time, sometimes danger, lots of times total confusion. And so one of the things I have learned is, as I've matured, is to have structure in my life. And then change doesn't frighten me so much. This pandemic and the stay-at-home orders and the changes that go with our new way of life have created a lot of fear and anxiety in a lot of people. And the greatest challenge for all of us at this time is, what are we telling ourselves? What are we saying to ourselves about this? Are we giving ourselves unhealthy messages? Are we feeding our fear? And we have to know that what we put into our minds is what comes out of it. Because of my former negative experiences with alcohol and prescription drugs, loneliness and confusion, and sometimes desperation, I was having a problem trying to figure out how to bargain with God. It wasn't that I didn't believe in God. I knew he was there. I just didn't think he believed in me. And it wasn't easy for me to go to him and ask for help because I was so angry with him for all the things he had put in my life. God has since helped me to understand that he is the reason for my survival and that I need structure and predictability in order to work with him and to be what he wants me to be. In the past 6 years, I've had 2 small strokes, 1 major stroke, in which I went totally blind for several days. I've had breast cancer. I have overcome a broken knee. And during that time, I lost a beloved brother and 2 nephews. But I've also written 3 books. And I've also learned some different ways to cope with my life. And one of the things I've learned is that when the unexpected happens, don't panic. Panic will drive us to do things that we don't want to do. It'll drive us to say things. It'll drive us to reach for alcohol. It'll drive us to reach for food. It will cause all kinds of problems in our life if we panic. And one of the ways not to panic is take a deep breath. Consciously sit down with your feet on the floor, or lean against the wall with your feet on the floor and take a deep breath in, counting to 5. Blow it out through your mouth, counting to 10. And do that as often as you need to in order to bring yourself back to center. One of the things I do when I really feel scared, like this morning before giving this talk, I went, God in, ego out. And I do that a lot, especially if I'm going to appear in front of people. Pray. Give yourself a time each day to spend time with God and pray. Read part of the Bible. Read an inspirational message. When I first started doing this, I set my alarm to wake up 30 minutes earlier than normal. And I spent that 30 minutes praying, talking with God, reading a message, writing something down that I heard from him, and giving myself a chance to have a better day than if I just jump out of bed and flee. Make a plan to structure your day, such as having meals at the same time, with everyone having their own chair at the table. Psychologists have proven that children feel like they belong if they have a chair that no one else gets to sit in at the table when you're having a meal. Try to go to bed at the same time. Try to get up at the same time. Develop a routine for exercise. I even put exercise on my calendar. It's important to have direction in your life because aimlessness leads to mental confusion. And when we're mentally confused, we can't make good decisions. And we can't accomplish much. Make a list of what you want to do to that day and put simple things on it, like make the bed, wash the dishes, make a phone call, write a check, contact a neighbor, give something to someone without them knowing it's you giving it. Put all of these things on your list. And as you do them, cross off your list. There's such a feeling of satisfaction when you cross off your list, even if the most simplest thing. And teach your children to do this because children get a great sense of self-worth when they get to cross off their list. Play music. Music saves my life. Music has always saved my life. In my worst days, I would play gospel songs and hang on to the music. And sometimes I would play them at warp 10. I loved rock and roll too. Music gives you a feeling of there is a tomorrow. It lifts you up and takes you to a better place sometimes. But there is nothing wrong with playing a sad song that brings you through your grief. And if you want to sit down and feel your feelings, give yourself 30 minutes to an hour to listen to the music and feel what you're feeling. When you finish doing that, take a deep breath in and do the breathing techniques I have taught you. That will bring you back to center and you can get on with your day. Movement is incredibly important. Walking, dancing. When I had my major stroke, my doctor told me the best thing I could do for my brain was to go dancing. He knew me because I love to dance. My husband and my family and my children made sure I danced even though I couldn't even walk. They would help me to the dance floor, they would hold me up, and we would dance. It also helps to go up and down the stairs, have an exercise bike, or get on the treadmill. Any kind of movement helps to bring you out of confusion or fear or anxiety. When I was working in a treatment center, I had a client she was so repressed. She would shuffle down the hall to this women's group that I was doing, and she would sit there with her head down. She couldn't hardly squeak out a word when I would ask her, and I didn't know how to reach her. I tried everything. And I asked God to give me a good idea of what to do. And he sent me to work with a bunch of old magazines. And when it was her turn to talk, I had her stand up and face the wall. And I asked a couple of women to help her throw these magazines against the wall and yell at the same time. In the beginning, these women put the magazines in her hand, lifted her arm, and threw the magazines with her. This went on for a few weeks. And I asked her husband to bring her some bright colored clothes. He brought her a red jogging suit, some really bright colored blouses. And in a short time, she was throwing the magazines herself. She was yelling at the top of her lungs, and she was skipping down the hall. When her family came to see her, they were so amazed they couldn't believe that it was her. And they were also a little annoyed because she was demanding respect and she wanted some attention. What she was yelling was, "I count. I'm important. God loves me. You can't talk to me that way. I am important. I will be somebody." It was just amazing. But what the story proves is that any action any action can help release your voice and can help you get out of whatever connection, slums, or whatever you're in. Movement will help. All change involves going through various stages. There's loss. Any loss will cause feelings of shock, denial, anger, bargaining, and finally acceptance, provided you go through all the stages. The client I was working with was stuck in shock. She couldn't move beyond it. I was stuck in anger, and it took me years to move beyond it. But finally, both of us came to acceptance in our own way and through movement. The important thing for you to remember during any stressful time is that what you tell yourself is true. What you put into your brain is what's going to come out of your brain. And you can only think of one thing at a time. When I first went into this business and I was a new counselor, I was working for a man who wouldn't allow us to say negative things at work. So if someone would come in and they'd say, oh, it's raining again today, he would say, isn't it wonderful? Isn't that rain beautiful? Aren't we so blessed? And yeah, there were times we wanted to choke him, but we learned. We learned to reframe our thinking. We learned to reframe our words, and we learned to say positive, uplifting things instead of negative things. Negativity is habitual, and positivity can be too. Another thing that's really important to remember during this time of change is that most people like to be asked for advice and help. If you're hesitant about asking someone to help you or to give you advice, realize that you're giving them a gift, that this is their opportunity to shine. And that to not ask for help and advice can be very selfish. Tell yourself, and for me, pride was always a big thing for me. So I had to tell myself there's a huge difference between pride and self-respect. Self-respecting person can ask for help, a prideful person can't. And finally, I'd like to leave you with this thought. James 2 says, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Carrie, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.